Hi there. I am here with my friend Dion Begg. Dion works with Butler Mortgages. He is one of the 20,000 mortgage brokers in Canada, and he's been ranked in the top 75 for 3 years. Winner of the Toronto Consumer Choice Award in the mortgage category. He's facilitated over $500 million in real estate transactions. He's a teacher at TREB, the Toronto Real Estate Board. And his specialty is helping families with their big three financial questions, which we can talk about today a little bit. And he does own multiple properties himself within Canada, US, and Australia. And it's really his mission right now to show regular Canadians how they can create a portfolio to help build wealth in the long term. And I'm happy to have known Dion for quite a number of years now. And welcome, Dion.
Thanks very much, Anita.
Perfect. So we're going to ask Dion some questions. There's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now surrounding what people think is going to happen, lending, a lot of changes in the lending environment in the past 5 weeks. So Dion is here so that he can be our specialist and sort of walk us through some of this. So Dion, overall, what are the major changes you've seen in the lending environment lately? And specifically, the questions I get from a lot of people are, what's turnaround times for mortgages? How are lenders looking at income? Say you're laid off, things like that. And can you take a down payment from a HELOC? I'd say those are sort of our big three. So what's your point of view?
All right. So firstly, banks are still lending. So let's just make that clear that right now, if you did need to refinance or you need to purchase, that the banks are still lending. The question is, will you qualify? And that's always going to come down to your particular circumstances. Those three main criteria that the banks always look for are your credit, your income, and your down payment. Credit, hopefully everybody who's watching this is managing their credit, and ideally banks are looking for credit scores above 680. Down payment, well, hopefully you've saved some, or maybe you have equity in your home. Income, this is the question, which I guess it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. And I know that some people listening to this may very well have been impacted by COVID-19 and layoffs or reduction in incomes, or maybe they're collecting the government assistance at this time. So to be clear, right now, if you're receiving any level of government assistance through the CERB or effectively on EI, even though maybe just last month you were gainfully employed and likely will be gainfully employed in the very near future when the world goes back to normal, the major banks have to take a snapshot of your current circumstance. And so if right now you are in that situation where your income is reduced or gone and therefore you're on assistance, right now, to be frank, it's very hard to qualify with major banks. As you probably know, in our world, we have category A lenders and then we have what we call B lenders. Some of these B lenders are actually recognizing regular income outside of the COVID situation. And so they might ask for a couple of years historical T4s and say, okay, we understand that this is happening now, but we will actually lend you money based on your historical income. So just know that when you move from category A to B, there are lender fees and interest rates are higher. But I can tell you that some of our clients are requiring funding at the moment, and we're utilizing that. So income is a major factor, guys. And just if you're listening and you happen to be one of the lucky ones who have stable income because maybe you're a government worker or in emergency services, then you're in a strong position to be still borrowing today. Now, the other questions you asked were about turnaround time. Is that right, Anita? Yeah. So as we all know, let's say when we're buying a property and we sign for the purchase on a Monday, usually we're given 5 days. So let's say by that Friday to fulfill our condition of financing. So generally speaking, what would happen is you'd send your documents to your bank or your mortgage broker on the Monday, say, hey, I purchased this property. And usually we're able to fulfill that approval within 5 days. So what I'm telling to all of our clients at the moment is, in the current world, while we will still aim for 5 days, and while we are still actually getting a few done within 5 days, I want to leave open the reality that, look, it's taking longer. All the bank staff are working from home. Some of the technology is not uniform. You know, different people have different technology at their houses. And so things may be a little bit delayed. And I can tell you that almost everybody that I'm dealing with, buyers, sellers, real estate agents, lawyers, everybody understands at the moment that things are taking a little longer. So I would still say, you know, we can put in the 5 days, but maybe potentially expect 7 days or so. And the reason for that also is sometimes to do with appraisals. and that's an interesting thing. Have you dealt with some appraisals yourself, Anita?
Yeah, even personally, I've dealt with some appraisals as well. And in general, as far as I know, appraisers are not going into homes right now. So they're doing a modified appraisal.
Yeah, so this is something that in regular circumstances we would have never seen. Most banks will always want a physical entry to the property by a third party to put their eyes on different things. But now, can you tell me what, with your experience, did they use photos or video internally, or?
So one, I actually sold my primary residence. So for my primary residence, I had sent pictures and I did a video walkthrough with the appraiser since it was my primary. That was pretty easy. I also refinanced 2 rental properties, which I honestly didn't want to go in either, just for everyone's safety. So
Yeah.
I got my tenants to provide pictures, or I provided the most updated pictures that I had. One thing I found to note is that appraisers do need and want to see pictures of your electrical panel and your mechanical system, so your furnace. They all did exterior. They all went to the property and just walked about the exterior of the property and took pictures and measurements, and that was it. So I would say for investors, take pictures of your electrical panels and your furnaces just in case you ever need them in the future. And then otherwise, I just provided them all the information they had asked of me.
Yeah, yeah. And we've even had tenants helping the owners of the property take photos of the mechanical systems and other things.
Yes.
Even do video walkthroughs and things like this. And so, again, so it's understanding what's happening. And then thankfully, we have technology which is allowing us to at least get us almost all the way there in a regular type of appraisal. And I'm happy to say that we haven't had any negative issues. And, you know, we close dozens of mortgages on a monthly basis. We haven't had any issues with appraisals coming in short because of the COVID situation. So that's a good thing.
Good. Okay. No, that's fantastic. I think the other question we had on there is, and I think this might be only one lender, but source of down payment. Any issues with that right now?
Yeah, so there was a big announcement this week that Scotiabank, a major lender, well, last week, that they're not accepting borrowed down payment for rental property purchases. And so I can tell you that I work with and most of these investors have, say, a 300 grand line of credit just sitting there, home equity line of credit, and they will usually use that as partial down payment on a property. So now Scotiabank has made the decision that if a person is buying a rental property, that down payment can't come from borrowed funds, that it must come from personal funds. So, you know, I just want you to all know that that's one lender amongst many, many lenders. We have not had this ruling given to us by any other lender. And so it is just the one lender. And again, it's due to COVID, meaning that if and when the world returns to, well, the new normal, that maybe we'll go back to the regular type of scenario there. But yeah, it's important to be aware of that in advance when you're selecting which lender you're going to take your deal to.
And still usually needing to show a 90-day history of where that payment is coming from?
Yeah, again, depending on the lender, but yeah, 90 is the safe number.
Okay, fantastic. Another big question we get, and more so at the outset, but still now, what is your opinion on deferring mortgages and how can that impact lending?
Yeah, so look, I think it comes down to your actual need, right? So if you're still actively working, you haven't had any disruptions to your income, then there's probably not a need to defer. But if your income has been dramatically impacted and it's a decision between buying food and paying your mortgage, then it's a no-brainer, right? You're going to defer. I can tell you that in all of our communications with the various lenders, they've said that if a client chooses to defer during this period of COVID, that it won't negatively count against them in the future. I think that everybody would understand that what has happened, and if there's any loss in income, it's not to do anything with you and who you are, how creditworthy you are. It comes down to the fact that your particular industry has been impacted, whereas your neighbor who has the exact same credit profile but happens to work at a different type of company hasn't been impacted. So at least I'm just telling you what I've been told, which is that credit won't be impacted and decisions to lend to you in the future won't be impacted. Okay, again, this is all the verbal information that we've received from the lenders.
Okay, fantastic. That's good to know. We sort of subscribe to the same field of thought. We don't want to defer if we don't need to, but are prepared to if it's something that we need to do financially. And I do think people need to really make sure they've worked out their numbers to understand what they can carry and what they can't, not just from a perspective of whether your primary income has changed, but whether your tenants are paying rent as well. So multiple factors, and you should really sit down and know what level of stress you can handle before you fall into those situations so that you can react accordingly. Definitely.
Agreed. Yeah.
So right now, are there opportunities out there, or what are the opportunities that you're seeing from your end?
Yeah, well, I mean, before we started the call, we were discussing the fact that listings are down significantly, right? And also there are probably fewer buyers. And the key word here is confidence, right? Even the people who have stable jobs are probably looking at the environment saying, is now the right time to buy or sell? And because of that, fewer listings, fewer transactions, confidence down, the likelihood is that prices are going to slide a little bit. Now, I don't want people to think that I'm Chicken Little saying, you know, the sky is falling, but on the flip side, we have to recognize that for the last 10 years, we've had double-digit growth in many, many years. So if I think you and I both knew that this year started off at a rampant pace.
A crazy pace, 2.5% appreciation in the first 2 months. We were going to well exceed 10% appreciation this year.
And everybody in our industry in February and March was saying, this has to slow down. This can't keep up. We were on track to do what we were doing in 2016, and that was a mess. Did we think that COVID would be the thing that would slow us down? I don't think anybody thought that. But I can tell you that pricing may have a little bit of air taken out of the balloon, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what does this mean? It means that I don't think any of us are, well, it means two things. If you're an investor, are there and could there be opportunities to purchase properties in the future that may be slightly lower than the historically high prices that we have had? I think yes, there's a high likelihood of that to happen. If we agree with the idea that prices are likely going to decrease, then we have to understand that we and the houses that we live in are not immune to that. And so a lot of our clients, what they're doing right now is they're recognizing that, okay, my house today, if I was to refinance it, and again, I'm probably talking to a lot of your investor clients, but for those who aren't investors, if you're looking to buy an investment property, the first thing you need to do is secure your down payment. Where do we do this? We usually do this through refinancing and accessing equity in the house that you live in. And if you live in a house today, and I'll use round numbers, let's say you live in a house today that's worth 800 grand, in 6 months from now, is there the possibility that it could be worth less? The answer is yes. And so maybe what we should do is refinance now while your appraisers have the sales history for January and February and March that were strong, because they look at the most recent 3 months. And then you get your $800,000 valuation today, and you can access equity based on today's values. So I can tell you what's happening a lot right now, Anita, is our investor clients are refinancing their portfolios to access that equity. They're not going to deploy that equity this week or next week. They're securing it and they're parking it over here so that when they feel that it's the right time to return and buy into the market, that they have access to capital there. So if you're at home thinking, what should I do right now? And there's two big reasons people are doing it. One is preparing for opportunity. But even before we get to the opportunity part, it is security, meaning that if you can access a line of credit for 300 grand with the intention to buy investment property, well, it might be nice to just know that tonight when you go to bed, you have access to 300 grand in the event that this crisis continues for months, and nobody can tell us a date on this. But I know that I feel much better going to bed at night knowing I have access to capital.
Yeah. And as we spoke about before, that's exactly what we did. We refinanced 3 properties almost immediately. And a different strategy, we used it like a readvanceable mortgage. So we haven't pulled the equity out. It is available as line of credit, but we have access to a lot of equity that we didn't previously have access to. So I agree with you. It is a completely proactive move to make right now. And you're right. It's likely the comparables moving forward will be less than what they were in January and February. January and February were just crazy, crazy months in our market.
Yep. So if anybody's out there thinking that property investment may be something that they want to do, I would say don't waste any time. Time does matter right now, and getting an appraiser into your property, sooner than later is important for you.
Yeah, I absolutely agreed. And the process for the appraisals, I'll be honest for you right now, is actually very
it's easier,
simple for us. It's much easier than normal. And I'll be honest, it's just an easier process. And if you have a house that doesn't show amazing, it's not really a huge deal, because they're not nitpicking at the houses right now because they can't really come in and see them in person. So they really have to rely fully on the comparables and the measurements and sort of just the concrete number data, not so much the subjective information, which can be an advantage, especially if you have a property that's maybe a little bit distressed. It actually might be to your advantage right now to do that. Absolutely agree. So the big question is, do you think people should continue to invest right now?
Yeah, well, we have to, and you started off earlier talking about how in my business we answer those big three financial questions.
Yes.
So those three questions are: how do I pay off my debt, pay off my house faster? How do I pay for my kids' schooling? How do I build wealth for retirement? These three questions are going to remain. COVID or no COVID, these are the three things that all of us in society have issues or often keep people up at night. How do I get these problems solved? And so there's a couple of ways to approach that. One is the traditional plan, which is what most, like 90% of Canadians do, which is any spare money they have to invest, they'll hand over to a financial advisor, and that money usually finds its way into the stock market in some form, mutual fund or whatever the case may be. But the reason that I guess people find people like you and me, Anita, is because they've been investing in that traditional path, and they know they're smart enough to do the math, and they know it's not going to get them to the finish line, right? The number that they need. And so in terms of whether or not, is it still a good time to be investing in real estate? I feel strongly the answer is yes. I know that regardless of what happens in the world, every night somebody has to go home and sleep in a bed. And either they're going to be sleeping in a bed in a house that they own or that they rent. And I feel that that's not going to change in the future, right? Will values of that property change a little bit over time? Likely, but the need for that won't change. Yeah. Would I be running out and buying a business today? Probably not. Would I be running out and buying stock today? Well, maybe, if you knew what you were doing, right? But maybe I'm not smart enough for that kind of stuff. I like keeping it simple. What's the monthly cost of owning this property? What's the rent? And actually, and I think you and I both do this, the measure of a good investment is not how it goes in good times. It's how it goes in bad times.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to measure anything, now's the time to measure, right? In that, if this is an asset that on a monthly basis, the cost of ownership is this and the rent is here, then that's the way you should be measuring whether or not that investment is something that you want to take on. So I feel strongly that real estate will continue to be one of those assets.
Absolutely. And that's why our experienced investors need to continue to stress test their portfolios. Even in the good times, they should always be doing this. And that's why we do try to encourage people to buy the right type of property in the right neighborhood to attract the right tenant, to mitigate risks as much as they can. And if heaven forbid there was a market and prices went down crazy and people bought houses like crazy and there were fewer renters, you want to have the units that everyone wants to live in when vacancies get a little larger. Reality is here, I think we'll see many more renters come into the market in the long run with all of this. There will be people who have to sell, whether due to the financial stress of everything that's happened with COVID, and whether, as that is to say, whether it's been families or couples breaking up, because living with your spouse is hard right now, even if you have a well-functioning household. And for those who have a few more challenges, financial stress and relationships get a little more stressful right now too. So I do think we'll see more houses come for sale. I think that supply will come back. And we saw a large number of suspended listings in the first 2 weeks after the announcement. So we know those people are still anticipating selling later on. So will the sales or the listings come out? They will. Will it be a sudden onslaught? I don't think so. It's going to be just like COVID. It's all going to be a gradual process. All the fallout, all the recovery, it'll all be gradual, and it will be long. So for people thinking that we're going to get an announcement one day and then everyone's going to list, I don't think that's what we're going to see. but I certainly am hopeful for a much more balanced market and not the seller's market we had at the start of the year.
Yeah, and I think, this is the case. And even when things open up and kids are back at school and people are back at work, that keyword again is confidence. Where does that confidence lie? When will it actually be at the point where people feel safe to go back into the property market in numbers, right?
Exactly.
And I think that, again, in speaking with my investor clients, what they want to do now is prepare their lines of credit, wait for that time, and then they want to be among the first people to get back into the market when the confidence is back in the market. They're waiting for some kind of positive upturn, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will butcher the quote, but right, Warren Buffett, be greedy when everyone else is cautious and cautious when everyone else is greedy. So my advice usually is don't wait too long until everyone's back in the market and the frenzy's there again, but just keep your eyes open. A deal makes sense or it doesn't. The numbers are the numbers. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific timing, but make sure your numbers make sense on any deals that you're looking at the end of the day, and that it can pass any stress test you want to put it through. So Dion, your biggest specialty obviously is helping families and couples, but people who aren't necessarily the massive investors, although you do help those as well, but those people who are looking to generate a bit of sort of generational wealth and just secure their futures. I know you have a webinar coming up this week. Explain that a little bit and let us know how to log on or join that.
Yeah, sure. So this coming Wednesday, which is April 29th at 6:30 p.m., I'll be hosting a webinar. Anybody's welcome to tune in. And basically, I'll be covering how we've been helping our clients answer those big three questions and put them on a path to what we call the 15-year, $2 million plan. It's achievable for most people who have good equity and good income. And even if this is not something that you can execute right now because of the circumstances, it's certainly information that you can take on board so that when the world returns to normal, you can be ready to move forward and execute. After that webinar, an offer at the webinar is that we would give you a free consultation to figure out where you are financially, where you could be, and figure out a path to get you there. So if anybody's interested, I know you're going to be sharing the links to that, but that'll be this coming Wednesday, April 29th, 6:30 p.m.
Yep, and fantastic. And for experienced investors, don't hesitate to share it with friends and family who have asked you about what you're doing and want to understand a little bit more about why you're doing this. It's great to explain it to them, but unfortunately, they don't always believe their families. They want to see it from a third party. So that could be beneficial for them as well. And we all have a little extra time to attend some virtual meetings these days. So it might be a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I'll just point out this one, it won't be recorded. So it's either, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dion, for talking with me today. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone else does. And keep in touch and, keep letting us know what to expect or what we're seeing in the market. We appreciate that.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.